Okay, everybody, so I took a little break, which actually happened to be an entire day break. Things came up after I shot the last video, so now we're back. Yet my stomach is still growling, and I'm trying something with the microphone. Got it hooked to me, so I'm hoping that the microphone is going to pick up everything, but I guess we'll find out. What's really beautiful about doing this program and doing it this way is it's really pushing me and my abilities to the next level, as it's going to push you to the next level also. As you can see, I don't have my Mexican blanket underneath me right now, and that's okay because you don't have to have a blanket under you to practice this. But you can. I always recommend having a blanket underneath your sits bones because it elevates the hips a little bit, makes it easier to sit cross-legged, unless you have really open hips, unless you can just go blah like that and they open up like mine. It's good to have something underneath the hips. Just as a note, we will talk about modifications for people who are older in the future, but also having elevation under the hips is very important. Whenever you see someone sit down to start class and the knees are very, very, very high, that means that all of this opening in the hip flexors and the pelvis and all of that, that's very, very tight. So if they're sitting with the knees high, it's also going to mean that they're probably sitting like this. You might see people who are hunched over because one thing, they don't have the ability to open up the knees, and then it also doesn't allow them to have the ability to sit up straight. So elevating the hips is very important. Now, that doesn't mean that you want to sit them on, let's say, a zafu, or you might have seen these round pillows, right? These large round pillows that people sit on. Does not necessarily mean that you're going to elevate them up really, really high, because then that's also not helping them to achieve doing the class. Especially when we bend and we move, then it removes the stability of the sits bones, the butt, the pelvis, the entire pelvic bowl resting on the earth, which is our foundation. So once again, just like I said before, when you're teaching a lazy monkey yoga class, level 1 and level 2, you're dealing with a population that for the most part is mobile, pretty mobile. I would say that to successfully achieve this class, as it is supposed to be practiced for a general population, an individual person should be able to sit on their butt with their legs crossed for at least 15 minutes. I guess that would kind of like be the basis for gauging someone's stamina and also gauging someone's mobility. So we're just going to leave it at that. There are times in which we will go from a cross-leg position to a half lotus. What would half lotus be? Well, that would be taking one ankle or heel and pulling it up and placing it on the opposite hip bone. So I'm actually drawing my left heel to my right hip bone, almost to the point that they touch. I adjust my hips so that I'm sitting up straight, and also I'm stacked in alignment. That means that one butt cheek or one hip bone is not elevated off of the mat, but both are still grounded regardless of what's going on with the legs. Okay? So we're not going to necessarily talk about half lotus today because it's unnecessary to go into the half lotus posture. Basically, when you're going through the lazy monkey yoga rib cage circles, we usually do that first with legs crossed. And then if it's a level 2 lazy monkey yoga class, we will repeat that sequence to the right and to the left with half lotus. All that does is up the game. It just takes it to the next level. It makes the level of complication more difficult, and it also requires more flexibility to be able to hold half lotus. I never teach the lazy monkey sequencing in full lotus. That would be where both legs are crossed up and the heels are by the heels of the opposite feet or by the opposite hip bones. So I don't do that. So half lotus is as far as I go when I'm teaching this particular sequence. So basically, why do we start seated and why do we end seated? Well, the earth is our foundation. The earth is the foundation. And like I said in the last video, we build all of these poses and sequences from the earth up. Now, when you're able to sit down and cross your legs, your entire center of gravity is dropping down, okay? The pelvis, the pelvic bowl, the sits bones, and most important, the spine is anchored to the earth. So you want to feel like your legs and your pelvis, your pelvic bowl, the sits bones, the butt, and all of this area, okay, all of this area around here is anchored. This is your anchoring point. Now, also, what you will find in the Taoist alchemy of Wang Lipping, taught by Nathan Bryan, which is our manual for meditation from the Dragon Gate lineage of the Taoist philosophy and mystical arts and mysticism and internal alchemy. All of the meditation practices are performed on the floor in a cross-legged position, all of them. At least all of the techniques that are taught in the book, The Taoist Alchemy of Wang Lipping, all of those exercises are meant to be performed seated on the floor in a cross-legged position. Once again, you can do it on a yoga mat. You can do it on a folded blanket to elevate the hips. And you can even, if you're going to do meditation practice, and you're going to be sitting for a prolonged period of time and you need that elevation underneath the hips, then I would say I'd recommend getting some kind of pillow to sit on. Not necessarily a round zafu, okay? Because there's something very unstable about that. It's very cool to look at, but not very practical when it really comes down to meditation. But I'd say a wider pillow, much wider than your hips, to sit down on, to give you more cushion, but also maintain stability. Basically, the way we start the Lazy Monkey Yoga class is we say, and remember, verbal cues are very, very important to me, so I need you to be journaling right now. I need you to watch this video and journal and take notes. Then come back later on with your notes and watch the video a second time so that you can actually do it physically. So I want you to pay attention mentally and listen to the verbal cues, and then I want you to come back and practice with me so that you can feel embodied and feel the practice. So what I always tell people is we're going to come to a cross-legged position. We're going to come to an easy seated pose, and I want you to rock from side to side, spreading your seat and anchoring the sits bones and the buttocks and the thighs and the ankles to the floor. Put your hands on your kneecaps or on your thighs with the fingers together and the palms resting on the knees and the lower part of the thigh. That is actually a hand seal, because when you close the mouth and you put the tongue to the roof of the mouth and you close your eyes and you place your hands on your thighs, you are actually sealing energy. You are actually sealing your own internal energy and your chi. starts to stay inside the body rather than it flowing in an outwardly direction. That's why, for the most part, inhaling and exhaling through the nostrils is preferred. Another interesting thing about inhaling and exhaling through the nose is that you're able to maintain more body heat. So like if you're in a cold room and you're inhaling and exhaling and mouth breathing, you're releasing a lot of heat out of the body. But when the breath is regulated in through the nose, out through the nose, a lot of internal heat is going to stay inside the body. So when we're talking about this position right here, we're talking about sealing off all of the, most of the energy places that release energy, the palms, also through the eyes and the mouth. And we're also maintaining and regulating the body with the internal body heat. So we just take a moment here to allow ourselves to settle. I like to use the word settle, settling into the pose, the posture, allowing everybody to bring it down a notch and get connected with the earth. We want to feel deeply connected with the earth. And then after we do that, then I tell people to drop their ear to their shoulder, their chin to their chest, ear to the opposite shoulder, and look up towards the sky, drop the head back. And so we start the practice by doing a check-in with our neck, the cervical spine. Now you're always encouraging people to sit up tall, sit up erect, so that the back muscles are actively engaged, supporting the spine, supporting the torso, right? From the trunk of the body up, the trunk of the tree up. So we start by circling the head. And you're in no hurry, okay? You want to give people a maximum amount of time to be able to feel the pose. If you say, okay, let's circle the head, we do it 1, 2, and then we circle the head the other way, 1, 2. You're not allowing people to feel and listen to the body. That's why moving slower with more precision and more mindfulness is always going to be more beneficial to the human being than go, 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 go. Because if you remember, I said before that in my opinion and my school of thought, your body should never move faster than the breath. One breath for one movement. If you're doing a very active yoga style, one breath per movement would be acceptable. Anything where the body gets ahead of the breath starts to become unstable. It's no longer manageable. Okay? So the point is that we're going to stay grounded in our trunk, and we're going to stay stabilized by allowing ourselves to feel the breath. So I really allow myself to do that head circle for a while, and the other way. Then I say open your eyes, and then we start doing shoulder rolls. So what's happening here is I'm starting to try to get my torso and my shoulders and my head, neck and my arms to be moving freely as I'm staying grounded and stabilized in the bottom part of my body. So I would say that from the navel, my belly button is right here, from the navel down, okay, is what I would consider the core part of the body. It's also where all of our vitality and energy resides. In Taoism, in internal alchemy, the abdomen area and the navel, okay, and maybe even an inch below the navel to the center of the body, not the spine and not the abdomen, but whatever that internal core is, which is the center in there. That is one of the most, if not the most important energy centers that we focus on when practicing this stuff. So that's why it's so important that this place here, whatever this is, stays grounded and supported. So from the navel up, I'm moving this way and I'm moving that way, and maybe even I'm doing big circles when I do my big, I would call them rib cage circles, because what's being activated here is more or less the thoracic spine, and also the rib cage is expanding and contracting. I will, when I'm rocking, I will shift a little bit so that maybe my sits bones will come off the mat just a little bit as I have that teetering action going on. So if you feel like your sits bones are coming off the mat when you're doing that, that's okay, because when you stop, you settle again. So we always do shoulder rolls, and then we bring the palms together. We interlace the fingers, and we press the palms away. And as we're pressing the palms away from the body, kind of like just giving ourselves a shoulder, elbow, wrist stretch, and also stretch for our fingers, we reach forward. And as I'm reaching forward, what's happening is my spine is nice and long, and as I reach forward, I'm lengthening and I'm reaching away. So the tailbone and the sits bones and everything is staying anchored, yet I'm creating a lot of space, I'm reaching out, I'm lengthening, extending, and I'm starting to test the trunk of the tree to make sure it's stable as I'm reaching forward. Okay, everything is going to shift as you reach forward. Then we reach our arms overhead, and we'll do little circles around. This is where you start feeling like your arms are the branches of a tree. Sometimes we do side to side lateral flexion, and what we're doing is we're just opening up the side body. It's interesting enough that there are two actions that we hardly ever do in real life. And one is lateral flexion, where we're actually bending sideways, not forward, not back, and twisting. Those are two actions we hardly ever do in the modern world, unless you're reaching for your seatbelt. And then you're always reaching for your seatbelt, and you're always twisting in the same direction. Do you see how modern life can create instability and imbalances in our body? And even a small movement like getting in your car and slumping over, holding your wheel like this, and twisting to the left every time you need to get your seatbelt is going to create an imbalance in your body. Over time, we're talking about health conditions that develop cumulatively over a long period of time, you see. So what lazy monkey yoga does is it makes the body move in every single direction possible to balance itself out, because balance, harmony, and stasis is what the body is always seeking, just like nature. Nature is always trying to come back into balance, right? So what do we have? We have our lateral flexions, we have our little circles, and then what I like to do is I like to roll the wrists. Roll the wrists and the fingers. Yes, roll them out and out and out, just so that you can feel everything that's going on in the arms, in the wrists, the biceps, the shoulders. Yes, there. Then we interlace our fingers behind our back and we expand our chest. You will find that there's a lot of people that cannot interlace their fingers behind their back. Okay? You might find that it is difficult for, especially men, to interlace their fingers and draw their shoulder blades back. If they cannot interlace their fingers, tell them to grab a hold of one wrist with the opposite hand. Okay? That might make it a little bit more accessible. So after the fingers are interlaced behind the back, you sit up tall, draw the shoulder blades back, extend the chest, and then we do little spinal twist from side to side. This is easy little spinal twist. And yeah, I'm kind of like moving undulating. The breath still stays stable. As I'm doing a little undulation. Undulation is a little bit different than one breath per movement. When we're talking about one breath per movement, we're talking about very big movements, like full body movements, like sun salutations, where you inhale up, exhale, touch the floor, inhale, step back into a lunge. That's what I mean by one breath per movement. Those are very big postures, whereas just little undulations are not big postures, big movements. They're very small. And they're just meant for, this is a warm-up. This is how we start to warm the body internally in order to do big movement. Okay. So then after we do our little spinal twists, we come back to center. At this point in time, I start to do my rib cage circles, like I said before, where we just allow ourselves to move around, rocking from one sits bone to the other, and just allowing ourselves to grow and lengthen from the core, from the trunk. I will do that in both directions. And then I'll come to my stop. I'll inhale up, I'll reach up, and we will do our forward fold. And this is where we come to our first real big forward fold with our legs crossed in a half lotus. Not half lotus, in an easy seated position. Encourage people to put their hands on the floor, spread their fingers wide, and press down so that they can feel the earth. They can feel the stability of the earth, the ground, the floor, whatever it is that you're on. It could be grass or it could be on the 10th floor of a building, it doesn't really matter. Put their hands on the ground, on the floor, and then just try to get them to round forward and relax over top of the thighs. Let the body pour over the thighs and drop the chin to the chest. This is another verbal cue that is crucially important, that you absolutely must remember when you're doing this. Any forward fold. We're going to go ahead and go there now because it is crucially important that you understand this concept, because this concept is going to be used in every single forward fold that we do. Forever. Whenever we do a forward fold or some kind of forward bend, we're going to tuck our chin to our chest so that we can completely open up our neck and the cervical spine, fully lengthening out through the back of the neck and drawing the chin to the chest. Why is that important? I'm going to stand up so I can give you an example of a forward fold and what I have found in teaching yoga. Like I said before, yoga isn't always good for you. Doctors tell their patients to go practice yoga, but doctors don't know anything about yoga. And most of the time, doctors don't know anything about health and nutrition. That's not what doctors do. Doctors look at someone's physical problem and they diagnose it with medication. They prescribe medication. That's what doctors do. They prescribe medication. Doctors aren't required to have degrees in physical fitness or in herbology or holistic medicine. That's not what they do. You go to a holistic practitioner to do those things. So there's a lot of people when they fold forward, okay, and in yoga, where they fold forward for whatever reason, in a forward fold, and when they forward fold, even if they can touch their ankles, even if they can touch the floor, put their palms flat on the floor, they do not fully release the neck. So you'll see people folding like this. You see how I'm looking forward here. I'm looking to the top of my mat. So my neck is kind of crunching and working very diligently to maintain the weight of the head. We never want to do that. Whenever we fold forward, we want to completely release the crown of the head. Completely release the crown of the head all the way pointing to the floor, while tucking our chin to our chest slightly so that we can completely release the weight of the head. Drop that weight of the head directly to the floor so that our spine can completely release and lengthen and get the traction that it needs to stretch, you see. So whenever we do any forward fold in this style of yoga, even in a sun salutation where we forward fold, we immediately move from this forward fold into a lunge. We're going to talk about that later. It doesn't matter. There might be people who practice yoga that that already understand what I'm talking about. They don't understand that. It's not important that we talk about that right now. What's important is that when you do a forward bend, you completely release everything in the head, neck, and shoulders, tucking the chin to the chest to release the back of the neck, and forward fold. And we're working on getting the crown of the head, the forehead, closer to the floor. Okay. Even if someone is not able to fold forward very far because of, let's say, tightness in the hips or whatever, they can have their hands in front. They can have their hands beside. Okay, so the hand placement isn't necessarily crucially important, whether the hands are forward or hands are beside the thighs. But what is crucially important is that that person is rounding, creating a C curve, and fully releasing the chin to the chest and releasing the head. You will be doing that verbal cue many, 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 many times. You'll be using that verbal cue a lot. Tuck your chin to your chest. You'll be saying that a lot when you're dealing with people who are learning this series. Even people who have practiced yoga from other styles of yoga, you will still be using that verbal cue because it's not something that people know, understand, or think about in the yoga world.